All right, so I think we are up here on Facebook Live now. Hopefully I will be able to see your comments here coming in soon. I guess I could say good afternoon. It's good evening here. I'm Alicia Ibrahimji from WFA's digital team. Jobin Paniker, our Collin County reporter, will be joining me shortly. He's just in his room next door editing a story for you guys tonight at 10. So I'm sure by now you guys have seen on Instagram or Twitter that WFAA has sent a team of, it's 3 of us here to India, and to discover more about Sherin Mathews and find out a little bit more about her life before she was adopted and moved to Dallas, to the Richardson area. Obviously, we know the Sherin Mathews story has grabbed the attention of not only people in Dallas, but people across the country and even worldwide. I mean, people from all sorts of countries have been involved with this story, wanting to know more information, wanting to find out the latest. You know, we've been covering this story at the station for, a month, ever since she went missing, ever since that first Amber Alert went out for her. And we wanted to dig deeper. We wanted to find out, what was her life like here in India? A lot of media outlets were saying she was adopted, and she, was in an ashram. Ashram is another word for adoption agency here in India. So we thought, we got a team together and we thought, let's come over to India. Let's come over to Bihar, which is a state in India, and let's, go to those places and go to that ashram. So today was day 1. We had boots on the ground. We arrived yesterday, kind of late in the evening. One thing to note is India is 10.5 hours. There's a 10.5 hour time difference. So right now it's 10:35 p.m. on Wednesday. And for you guys at home in Dallas, it's, 12:05 p.m. So huge time difference. But, it's really been working to our advantage because we've been able to gather, when you guys are sleeping, and give you that information as soon as you wake up. If you head over to WFA on Instagram, or my Twitter account, you'll see throughout the day I tried to keep you guys informed every location that we went to. So let's start out and talk a little bit about what we found. We, first of all, Nalanda is where the alleged ashram adoption agency was said to have been. And so we got in a car around 9 o'clock today. There is a journalist from a news agency here in Bihar helping us. I speak a little bit of Hindi, which is the native language here. And Jobin speaks a South Indian dialect called Malayalam. So between the 2 of us, we thought we would be okay, but we thankfully got a journalist from over here to help us out. So he took us, we got in the car at 9 o'clock, and we road trip to Nalanda. Now that was about 60 kilometers, so it was about 2 hours of a drive for us. But we really, really, really wanted to go over there to just, like I said, see that adoption agency. In Nalanda, if you guys have been following this story, there's a lady named Babita Kumari. Now, we interviewed Babita through a phone interview last week, Jobin did. And Babita was basically in charge of the adoption agency, and she talked to us a little bit about, her experiences with Sherin and, what kind of child she was. She said, a lot of media outlets had been reporting that she had developmental issues, that she had an eating disorder. Babita told us last week on the phone that that's simply not true. While she was in her custody and in her care, she had no developmental issues. The only thing that she noticed was that she had sort of cross eyes. But other than that, I mean, she drank her milk, she ate her food, got along with the other kids perfectly fine. It was very interesting. We really wanted to talk to her in person. Babita Kumar has not done any TV interviews with any local media, international media. So we were really, really honored that she invited us into her home in a village close to where the adoption agency was. And she invited us into her home and allowed us to speak with her for quite some time. So that interview is going to be airing tonight at 10 for you guys in Texas. Jobin, like I said, is next door writing that story for you. Brandon, our photographer, I gotta hand it to him. Jobin and I have been to India before, so we kind of knew what to expect. We're familiar with the people and the culture, but Brandon has been a trooper. He has gotten out there with his camera and just really gotten the weeds of things and gotten some really incredible shots and really been able to tell this story. Because at the end of the day, we really, really wanted to tell the story about her and tell the story about her life. And I think that when you watch this story at 10 o'clock tonight, and again tomorrow when we do another story for you and cover a different angle, you'll see that, you know, you're kind of getting that full picture of what her life was like. So Jobin has some photos. He's going to join me. Like I said, Brandon may come over as well. They're working right now to put that story together, but we printed off some pictures. This is probably one of my favorite pictures of her. Love her smile. And we took these pictures around the village and asked people in the area, you know, if they were aware of Sherin and what had happened to her, and if they knew her and at what length did they know her. So we talked to Babita, backtracking a little bit. And Babita, you know, reaffirmed what she told us last week: no developmental issues, no eating disorder. She said one thing that stood out to her the most was, of all the children that she was taking care of, I think she said she had about 30 children in her custody at a time. And one thing that stood out to her the most was that Sherin had this cute little stutter. And she said in the Indian culture, when a child stutters like that, it's considered cute. And she said she'll never forget her smile and just like the warm presence that she had when you were around her. She said Sherin had two other friends, and they were kind of considered the Three Musketeers. So it was really nice hearing from her, you know, a firsthand account of what, you know, what her experience with Sherin was. I'm going to pull this picture up because I took this. This was the first thing that I noticed when we went into Babita Kumari's office. It was a really narrow hallway, really small area. So we went kind of up this dark, you know, pathway, and then we got into this bright office. The walls were bright green, so that automatically caught my attention. And of course, I just, you know, started looking around everywhere, and the first thing I saw was this photo. I don't know if you, there you go. And it's a picture of Sherin, baby Sherin, right on her wall. And so this is on our Instagram story if you want to get a better picture of it. And guys, I'm looking at your Facebook comments here in the live channel, so please, if you have any questions, I will try to answer them to the best of my ability. If it's something I can't answer, hopefully Jobin will be able to come in a few minutes and answer some of those questions. So let me go through some of those first, and I'll go back to why this picture caught my attention. Let's see. A lot of people saying, great, they've been very worried about Sherin. Let's see, Heather says, such a sad story. No one deserves this kind of life. Speaking as an adoptee. You know, Heather, that's obviously a really great point. And that's kind of what motivated us to come over here, is that, you know, yes, what happened to her is so tragic. But she was actually in dire needs of being rescued, you know, before she was adopted. And we wanted to tell that story too. So not only was she, you know, in a bad situation when she was living here in India, she was in, you know, poverty around here. Her parents abandoned her. She was found by sort of like the Indian Salvation Army, if you will. So she was in a bad situation here, and then she came to America, and, you know, obviously that situation for her there wasn't, you know, good for her either. So, you know, it's a really difficult story to tell. And we really wanted justice for Sherin, and we really wanted you guys in Dallas to understand, you know, where she came from and her upbringing. Because yes, like I said, the nuts and bolts, you know, we've covered the facts as we've gotten them in, but there's more to the story here, and that's kind of what we wanted to show. Let's see. Sebastian, one of our reporters, he commented saying, had anyone in that town heard of the case? Yeah, that's a really good point. So a really good question. Obviously, we talked to Babita. She had, you know, one-on-one experience with her. We went to the adoption agency. It's no longer a running adoption agency. Now it is completely residential. Oh, that's Jobin. Give me just 1 second, guys, and I'll go grab him. Oh, you're live on Facebook.
All right.
So I pulled up a chair for you. Sebastian just chimed in and commented and asked, had anyone in the area known about Sherin and known of the case. And I was just talking about the property owner. So the building is residential now, and he said he remembers seeing her. He remembers spending, time in his housing complex and seeing her run around and play with her friends. And I mean, you had a really in-depth conversation. Do you want to kind of elaborate on that?
Yeah. So the first thing I did was show him the pictures. Yeah. And he spotted her immediately. Yeah. Obviously, he knew a little bit of the background, but said immediately he knew. This was Sherin Mathews, but of course he knew her as Saraswati, which is a lot of the people in Nalanda know her as Saraswati, right? Yeah, which is named after, as you said, a Hindu goddess, right? Yeah. So I showed him the pictures, and he said, "This is Saraswati. I know her story. They've been. She was an orphan, one of 16 girls, 15 to 16 other girls, and they would play on the top 2 floors of this light blue building."
Yeah,
right?
Let me see if I can pull up a picture.
You've got that picture.
Talk about it.
A lot of the houses and buildings here in India have pretty interesting colors, right? This is a light blue building. It really stands out. And it used to be,
if you guys can see it, yeah.
It used to be for that orphanage. Does not exist anymore. And that's kind of what's kind of skeptical about this whole bit, because, have you mentioned that we had a chance to talk with Babita Kumar?
Yeah, we just went over that a little bit. And kind of talked about how, she looked at those photos, and one thing I did want to mention, I just finished updating the live blog on WFA.com, so definitely go check that out. But it was interesting that she was flipping through the photos that you brought, and she said she could just tell from the first picture to, her latest picture that she's overcome with sadness, and that really personally gave me chills, because it's like, she's been separated from this child for, a year now? Mm-hmm. And she can just tell by looking at a picture. I mean, when you have that sort of motherly connection with a child, I'm not a mom yet, but I can only imagine that when you have that connection, you just know. You know when your child's hurting. You know when your child's in danger. And for her to have said that, that was pretty powerful.
Yeah, that strikes a chord with it. I think any parent, and I guess you don't even have to be a parent, but she said she looked at all the pictures, and then she looked at the picture that she had in her office, right? Yeah. And the one that she has in her office is a picture of when she was obviously an orphan there at the orphanage. And she says there's a pattern of sadness in the pictures that I brought. And again, we should probably mention that Wesley Mathews, although he has been charged, has not been convicted, and he has a right to a fair trial, and we are to presume him innocent. But this, we are hearing from the adoption center or the caregiver that she sees a pattern in her face, that as soon as she left her in India, she didn't see that smile, that spark anymore.
Yeah. So we're going to go to some of these questions here. Nikki's asking, and I saw this question a lot on Twitter too throughout the day. Have you all attempted to locate her birth parents? I know, you've been working on this story for a month. We both kind of have. And even Babita said that's kind of impossible, right? Yeah, you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, so there's a place called Gaya, which is about, I'd say about 150 to 170 kilometers from here. So it would be like a 4 to 5 hour car ride to Gaya, which also happens to be a huge destination for Buddhists.
The birthplace of Buddhism, we were told. Yeah,
the birthplace of Buddhism, so for the Buddhist religion. And that is, from what we understand, that's where Saraswati's parents are from. She was left near bushes in that area. Yeah. Finding her parents is a needle in a haystack. This whole story is a needle in a haystack, right? And so we were told that she was picked up by someone with a group called Balyan Samiti or something like that, right? And essentially, it's like the Red Cross. Yeah. It's like the Red Cross,
or Salvation
Army of here in India. And she was then taken from that location to Nalanda, which we spent considerable time to today.
Yeah. And it was time well spent. I mean, the day kind of went by like that, at least for me. I know for you kind of too. Yes, it was hot, and yes, it was a long day, but we wanted to learn more, and it almost felt like at some point we didn't really want to leave. We felt like there was still so much that we could have done there. So really good information today. Another couple of questions here. This is an interesting one from Ron. He says, how do you keep your emotions in check doing this story? I get so mad every time I hear new info. It's a little bit easier for me, I guess, because I'm, behind the scenes writing and doing all the social stuff. How do you keep your emotions intact? Because you have to show up on camera and just kind of be very well put together. So
anybody who says that stories don't affect them and think they're being true journalists by being that way, I think they're lying to you. I have 2 small children. They're 4 and 2 years old. Sherin was 3, and this story has affected me.
Yeah.
And I cannot imagine. There's just a lot. I cannot imagine my child being missing for however many days she was missing, and then to be found in a culvert. That is, there are no words for that, and I don't think any parent could put that all into any semblance of a sentence or sense. That's just, and again, that's my take. But if you have small children, you're hearing this and seeing this story unfold slowly. It's hard. It's hard to wrap your brain around that.
Yeah.
And we're always told to be objective, and I think you can still be objective and yet still be emotional, and that's what we try to be.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I was just saying earlier, not to get off topic here, but Brandon is with us too, but he's busy working hard to put that story together for you guys tonight. And I was explaining, you and I have been to India before, but Brandon has really kind of like taken this experience under his wing and gotten some really great video. And I mean, I wish he would come in here, and he said he would stop by, but we've talked about it in the car, and we said, like, how would you summarize this experience for someone who's never really been here and experienced this culture and kind of going through the journey with us? And he said, there really are no words.
There are no words, right? I mean, India is a very different pace, very different culture, and they have different value systems. But there's there's some really beautiful aspects of India that we see on a daily basis, at least in the last, in my last 5-6 trips here to this country. Is this beautiful blend of people, right? From all backgrounds, all colors, all religions, Hindus, Buddhists, Muslims, Christians, you name it.
Yeah. It's been a real, it's a melting pot. I mean, just when you step out of where we're staying, we've seen people from all different religions, Muslims, Sikhs, Hindus, Christians, I mean, everybody. So the community is really, really different and very diverse, I guess you could say. So going to some more questions here. Angela, good question. Why does that orphanage not exist anymore? We asked, I just asked you that like a couple of minutes ago to explain. Maybe I didn't hear something correctly, but from what we understand, the government shut it down. Why? We don't exactly know. I mean, Babita Kumari herself doesn't really know.
It's all really sketchy.
Yeah.
And
to be completely honest,
I do feel like there's something that's not being told, not being said. I don't know if that's on the Indian government side or from her side, but essentially we asked her point blank, why do you think you were shut down, or what does the notice say? And she said the notice says that she has to shut down in so many days. Right. I think it was like September 7th or something like that. And I asked her, did it give a reason? And she said it did not give a reason. We do know, however, that periodically the Indian government will come around, right?
And do inspection.
Did she say once a month? I'm trying to remember what somebody said.
Yeah, frequently.
It was the landlord that said once a month.
Yeah.
The Indian government would come around to inspect, and it's very possible. I'm not saying that's what happened here. It's very possible that that orphanage did not meet the Indian government's requirements.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I wish we had a better answer. And like I said, I was writing the story and I had to go and ask Jobin one more time. I'm like, wait, did we get, proper clarification on this? And yeah, he said no. So some other good questions here.
Sunil Abraham, I'm assuming you're a Keralite, Sunil, so am I. Would you also travel to Kerala to find out more about Wesley Mathews' parents and their reaction on this case and story? We have made attempts to talk with Wesley Mathews, Cindy Mathews here, obviously in the States. We've also made attempts to talk to Wesley's in Kerala. We understand they live near Ernakulam, or maybe Wisconsin, where they live, right?
Yeah,
and we've made attempts to talk with them. We understand Wesley's parents are no longer at their home.
Mm-hmm.
I think her dad, his dad and mom lived in that home, and they're no longer there. We're being told that they're in hiding. That's according to the journalists on the ground in Kochi. I cannot verify that because I have not seen that sort of in person.
A lot of really, really good questions. And guys, if we don't get to your questions here on live, I'm gonna go back in before I go to sleep. Promise, and answer as many questions as possible. Let's see. Perla says, "Why is the mom not in jail? Do you guys have honk that the cops need to look at the mom?"
Hunch.
I think maybe they meant hunch. I don't know. We don't have any information. We've not seen any factual information. Police say she is innocent and they don't have any evidence against her. That's not to say she may be involved later down the line, but right now we don't have any solid information. So no, the answer is no.
We're not in the business of investigating that, and we're also not in the business of charging people or convicting people. Unless there's a charge brought by the police department, Cindy Mathews is free to go wherever she likes.
Wanda says, "How old was she when the Mathews adopted her?" So I believe 2.
She may have been 2 or just under 2, right?
Because she had got adopted in 2016. So if you do the math, journalists don't do math.
It was like a year and 2 months. I think is
Okay.
how long they've been with the Mathews family. Some of you, I can already see some names under. Some of you are really privy to this story. So correct us if you'd like. We don't know everything about this story.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, I really like this comment. It's not really a question, but Alicia, I guess, and I just lost it. Oh, here it is. Nope, it's gone. But she said something like, "It may be a needle in a haystack, but it's a dent in your soul." And it really is. When you hear these stories, there's a lot of moving parts to this story. There's no question about it. But like I said, yesterday, right? Tuesday. Yeah, we've lost track of the days, but Tuesday in Dallas at an undisclosed location, because the family's wanting privacy, understandably so. But again, like what we're focusing on here in India is just what her life was like before she came to the States. And I think it's really important to understand that and sort of provide that perspective. So we kind of put some context to her name. She wasn't just an adoptee that moved to Dallas and this thing happened. I mean, there was a whole history behind it. And so that was a really good comment. I like that.
We went into today not thinking that we'd get nothing.
Nothing, yeah.
Right? We got really lucky. It was really a matter of a phone call. We just said, let's get in the area and let's put in a call. Babita Kumari, the caregiver, answers the phone, says, "I'm not at my location where you think I am. I'm in a different location," which happens to be a really small village, very small. And you'll see that tonight at 10 o'clock. So we knock on the door and we say, "Will you talk with us?" And she was, she kind of let us in with open arms, right?
Open arms, served us tea, water, customary in the Indian culture. I mean, really just made us feel like we were at home, and was so willing to talk to us. And it's really interesting the way things work here in India and the culture. We talked about that a little bit before. I mean, in Dallas, if we were to do this, you got to call and set up a time, and there's just this whole process. We literally just thought, let's get in the car. We're taking a risk by driving, 2 hours away from Patna, which is where we are now, the city, into this village. But let's do it anyways and see what we can see. and our fingers were crossed, our toes were crossed, and it worked out. And so we were
worst comes to worst,
glad.
I think worst comes to worst, we would have had a story about the difference in cultures, right?
Yeah.
Here you have a child who is so young, not privy to the culture she's in, but probably more understanding of Indian culture. But to go from that world to the world in the States, we could at least speak to that. But then when we got Babita to call us, and then the landlord happened to be there as well. We also worked with News Bihar.
Yeah.
Have you mentioned that?
No, I have not even gotten to. There's so much to talk about. We've been going for 25 minutes. We could go for hours, but there's so much to talk about. So you can.
Yeah, News Bihar is a local media outlet here in the state of Bihar. So you have Bihar, which is the state, right? And then you have Patna, which is the capital.
Which is where we are right now.
Which is where we are, right? This is also the airport. This is where the airport is. And so about 105 kilometers, about 65 miles.
Yeah, I said
from
about
there,
2-hour drive.
Yeah,
yep.
2-3 hour drive, depending on Indian traffic.
Right.
Is where that's how long it takes to get to Nalanda, which is where
Another city.
Right. That's where the adoption agency was, and then Gaya, which is probably another 2 hours, is where Sherin was found.
Right.
So we had to find a local media outlet to sort of work with, right? To help us get on the right
Navigate
track.
Through. And
No, you speak Hindi a lot. You don't give yourself enough credit in terms of how much Hindi you can speak, and you speak it well. But we needed kind of boots on the ground kind of thing, and they were our boots on the ground, and they made the phone calls for us. And I remember many nights prior to us coming even to India, I'd be up on my phone between 2 a.m. and 5 a.m. because that's like prime working hours here in India, just trying to get in touch with the right people.
Yeah.
So News Bihar connected with us, and we've been with them in the car with them. So it's 7 people to an SUV.
Yeah.
Tight fit.
It was interesting. Definitely an experience, but like I said earlier, well worth the experience and well worth all the information we got today.
Jennifer Barreto says, unfortunately, with the Indian culture, I find the pressure put on kiddos with disabilities is immense. You know what? Jennifer hits on a really tough subject that I think we don't talk enough about.
We don't.
Especially in the Indian culture. There is a horrible stigma, and I have no problem saying this. There is a horrible stigma in Indian culture when it comes to, and again, we're not saying that Sherin had special needs, but that conversation needs to happen if that was the case, right? Children with special needs, we have a horrible stigma about, and we also have a bad stigma when it comes to children who are adopted, and the parents who are adopting them, and that is, I don't know what the answer is to overcoming those.
Yeah, I mean, she says, let's read this here. Jennifer says, unfortunately, with the Indian culture, I find the pressure put on kiddos with disabilities is immense. That's why I was curious. Wonder if it could have been a potential motive. Hate to think that it would be. And again, because this is such a high-profile case and story and investigation, there's been lots of speculation that, because she had special needs, the father got out of hand, and we've heard that narrative. We're not necessarily saying that's what we believe. I mean, we don't know what to believe, and that is the God-honest truth. I still don't know what to believe. But all I know and all we know is that there's this 3-year-old girl who is no longer with us, and we need to find out, why, what led up to that. But more importantly, how are we going to remember her? And, how do the people who know her and knew her remember her? And how will they, think of her? And again, that's what we're here to do. But, Jennifer, great point. It is a huge problem that we don't talk about it enough in the South Asian community. And hopefully, I mean, I hate to say this, but hopefully if there's anything that we've learned from the Sherin Mathews case, if that is the case, it's that we need to have these conversations and we need to talk about them and we need to deal with them in the proper way. So hopefully this is a learning experience, and it's unfortunate that a child had to leave us, but this should be an example so it doesn't happen again.
Sheila just joined us, and she wants to know.
Do we have any information on the birth mother?
I wish we did. That's like the number one question.
$1 million question
and
now.
Finding her would be next to impossible.
Yeah.
I wish we could. I wish someone would come forward to us and say, this is Saraswati. I mean, this was Saraswati's mom.
Yeah.
And I'd hate to be the one to even break that news to her. I cannot even. Can you imagine? I mean,
in a lot of these homes in these villages, they probably don't have TVs, so they're relying on newspapers. And so, like for example, Babita didn't know that, and it was news to us because we've been so immersed in this angle of the story. I know you knew because you've been keeping up, but she was laid to rest yesterday. We had to tell Babita that, and that. In the Indian culture, when someone passes away, your final rites ceremony is so sacred. And that's not to say that it's not in any other religion, but they take it very seriously, and it's kind of like this whole thing, right? There's days of prayer, and it's very long. And so we had to tell her that, and she didn't know. And she even said that, and Naman, the journalist that was with us from Bahar News, even said, this is an extensive deal. The final rites passage is huge for us. So I imagine a lot of the people in the village they may have known her, but they don't know what's exactly happened to her unless they've, picked up a newspaper or something like that. But yeah, to your point, I mean, I would love to find her, obviously, and talk to her and have a conversation, but then, what if she doesn't know? And I don't know, we've talked about this a lot, my family and I, and just learning from my elders in the Indian culture. It will probably be very rare for her to come forward, just because it's like, what do you say? Yeah. This happened, and she may have her reasons why she, left her. We definitely need to learn that. That is a
tangential issue to what we're dealing with.
Yeah.
That is also an issue that Bihar is dealing with in terms of the number of orphan children in the area.
Yeah. One thing that has been on top of my mind, after talking to Naman, the Indian journalist from Bahar News, I asked him, how have, they been covering the news here? Because, for Texans that are watching, Dallasites, you guys know, you really came together after hearing everything about this story, and, vigils were set up, candlelight ceremonies were, it was interesting and crazy to see the amount of attention and everyone that joined in on Facebook and just, rallied the community together. And so I wanted to find out, is that happening here? And it's really sad to say, but Naman said no. I mean, yeah, in the beginning, everyone was kind of like, oh, wow, this happened. But this sort of thing happens here all the time.
The only thing that really struck, that stuck out for me was that the fact that it dealt with American parents,
right?
And that's probably what kept it in the news cycles for
as long as it did.
Yeah, maybe 1 week, 2 weeks.
Yeah.
It was really strong here in India. But aside from that, it at least feels like Indian media sort of has moved on until there's some proper movement.
Right.
We have politicians, I guess you could call them, who have decided to sort of opine on this whole deal.
Yeah.
And that sort of comes in every so often. You'll see an article here and there, but the facts for the most part have not changed.
Yeah.
And that Wesley is still in jail, and Sini has not been charged or anything like that.
Yeah. A couple more questions. We're coming up on the half-hour mark here. And we both want to get you all the pictures and videos that we've done. I know Jobin's still working on his story for tonight. So a couple more questions. Christiana says, don't you think the adoption agency should have the most info for her birth mom? Theoretically, yes, but she was abandoned and found in a bush.
When she was found by a different group,
right? Completely different group
than the adoption agency. So this group that picked her up then brought her to the adoption agency.
And she wasn't even named. They didn't know her name. The adoption agency gave her the name Saraswati. So, I mean, this child has probably had 3 names in her entire life now at this point. But that's how little information they knew and how young she was when they found her. But a very good question. I mean, obviously, if this was in the United States, there might be a little more information there, but nope, not in this case. Let's see.
You can see our report on the funeral. Yeah, I do not know where the funeral was. I know people keep asking, and
we just got a comment asking, debating where the funeral was, when it was, etc.
The attorney has come out and said they're not going to disclose that because I think they're afraid that people are going to desecrate, that site, that burial site.
Oh, there we are.
And so at this point, we do not know unless someone sort of comes forward. We do know that 45 people, maybe a little more, were there for that funeral. It was a funeral sort of in the according to the Brethren service, which is sort of an Indian evangelical Christian service. And one person who I had a chance to talk with tells us it was a peaceful service, also a very emotional service, and I can see it being both those things.
Yeah.
And heavily.
So really quick here, my battery on my laptop is dying, but we will be back tomorrow night or tomorrow afternoon in Texas time to debrief you. We have one more day in India, so moving forward, let's talk about what they're going to see. So of course tonight at 10. I can't even wait to see it because I know all the things that we talked about today, but why don't you kind of give like a little spiel about it?
30 seconds on this thing? All right, so...
Can you even do 30 seconds?
No, we spent so much time trying to figure out where is Sherin Mathews for so long.
Yeah.
We had so many awesome people take their own time to look for this little girl. Right, so now the focus has shifted from Sherin Mathews to Mathews. That's why we decided to do this trip.
Absolutely.
Right? That's why you and I said, let's go to India and let's find something. And today we found something. We found people who knew her here on the ground. So we drove 210 kilometers total, right, to the area, to the adoption agency. We found where Saraswati played. We found, where she was taken care of. We found the person who took care of her. You'll hear what she has to say. This is her first TV interview.
Yeah, I did say that. So this is a privilege. Yes, it's an honor, but this was a privilege because, as you can imagine, I'm sure she's gotten a lot of people, asking her to do things, and she finally, sat down. And so it's going to be very interesting for you guys at home to hear from her, about her experience.
I know. I have.
Yeah.
Omer's been very active on this.
Yes.
On this entire story from the beginning. So I want to answer this question: is the Indian consulate embassy still involved, and to what degree? As far as we know, they've been kind of silent on it in the last week. Obviously we saw them there at the Richardson Police Department.
Yeah.
But aside from that, I've not heard anything else since.
Yeah.
We did. I did put in requests to talk with the chief minister of the state. I did not hear back, Omer. So
we will obviously keep tabs on it. We are not going to let this story get swept underneath the rug, even when we come back home. This is top of our minds. Of course, we're still going to continue to do our daily jobs and cover the other stories that we need to, but this will always be in the back of our minds, and we will make sure that it doesn't get swept under the rug, so we'll keep active with that. Okay, so tomorrow, here's the game plan. I will be live on Instagram again, updating videos and pictures, on Twitter as well. Depending on our service. Today was really good, so tomorrow we're hoping for the same. So tomorrow we're going to talk to a couple of leaders in the community, perhaps the children, I'm going to butcher this, the Ministry of Women and Children.
The former Minister of Minister of Women and Children.
because we want to know what now, what happens now. Are the adoption laws going to change? Are they going to be a little bit stricter? Are they not? I mean, is this so all those things, we're going to try to figure out the answers to those.
Yeah.
We're going to an orphanage to talk to Naman, our Indian journalist. He has a friend that works there, as I understand, a teacher, and just kind of, what this means for him, and, how he, his involvement with children, and what that relationship is.
Find out what impact this has.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people are talking, one of the main questions I've received is, how does this affect international adoptions?
Right. Yeah.
And we're going to talk with someone who works with orphaned children, and I'm sure he's going to have a perspective that you won't find anywhere else. So
yeah.
We'll have that. That's tomorrow night.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
My days are running into each other.
I know. So tomorrow is our last day. Obviously, today was our first day, so we're here for a very short period of time. We've talked in the car on the way back that we wish we had more time. We could be here for weeks, months, telling, stories. But we are trying to do the best that we have in the time that we have. So any questions that you guys have, again, leave them in the Facebook comments.
Oh.
I will get back to you as soon as I can. Again, tonight at 10 o'clock on WFAA. If you don't have cable, you can watch the story on WFAA.com. I have an updated live blog where I've put pictures and kind of updated what we did today. Going to do the same thing tomorrow. Of course, social media, we are going to be all over it. And we are up and early at 6 a.m. tomorrow to start the day again. Do you want to add anything else?
The only other thing is, if we stop telling her story, then we've closed the book on Sherin Mathews. And
right.
I think she deserves a lot more than that.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you guys for all the interest in the story. Because of you guys commenting and sharing and spreading information as it comes out, you're keeping her story alive too. And so we thank you for that, and we thank you to everybody who's helped us, get information and contacts, and it's been really rewarding to work with our audience on this story. So that's all we have for tonight. We are going to get back to work and head to bed, and we will see you guys again tomorrow night for an update. Take care, everyone.
Good night.